Chapter 13 Another View of Hester. In her late singular interview with Mr. Disley, Hester Prynne was shocked at the condition to which she found the Claremont reduced. His nerves seemed absolutely destroyed. His moral force was at saying to more than childish weakness. It grew helpless on the ground, even while his intellectual faculties retained their pristine strength, or had perhaps acquired a morbid energy, which disease only could have given them. With her knowledge of a train of circumstances hidden from all others, she could readily infer that besides the legendary action of his own conscience, a terrible machinery had been brought to bear, and was still operating, on Mr. Disney's well-being and repose. Knowing what this poor fallen man had once been, her will soul was moved by the shuddering terror with which he had appealed to her, the outcast woman, for support against his instinctively discovered enemy. She decided, moreover, that he had a right to her utmost aid, little accustomed in her long seclusion from society to measure her ideas for right and wrong by any standard external to herself. Hester saw, or seemed to see, that there lay a responsibility upon her, in reference to the clergyman which she owned to no other, nor to the whole world besides. The links that united her to the rest of humankind, links of flowers, or silk, or gold, or whatever the material, had all been broken. Here was the idle link of mutual crime, which neither he nor she could break. Like all other ties, it brought along with its obligation. Hester Prynne did not now occupy precisely the same position in we beheld her during the early periods of her illness. Years had come and gone. Pearl was now 7 years old. Her mother, with the scarlet letter on her breast, glittering in its fantastic embroidery, had long been a familiar object to the townspeople, as is apt to be the case when a person stands out in any prominence before the community, and at the same time interferes neither with the public nor individual interest and convinces a species of general regard had ultimately grown up in reference to Hester Prynne. It is to the credit of human nature that it said where its selfishness is brought into play, it loves more really than it hates. Hatred, by a gradual and quiet process, will even be transformed to love, unless the change be impeded by a continually new irritation of the original feeling of hostility. In its matter of Hester Prynne, there was neither irritation nor ignoramuseness. She never bowed with the public, but suffered uncomplaining to its worst usage. She made no claim upon it. In requital for what she suffered she did not wait upon its sympathies. Then, also, the blameless period of her life, during all these years in which she had been set apart to infamy, was reckoned largely in her favour. With nothing now to lose in the sight of mankind, and with no hope, and seemingly no wish in gaining anything, it could only be a genuine regard for virtue that had brought back the poor gatherer to its path. It was perceived, too, that while Hester never put forward even the humblest title to share in the world's privileges, rather than to breathe to the common air, and earn daily bread for little bread and herself by the faithful labour of her hands. She was quick to acknowledge her sisterhood with the race of man, whenever benefits were to be conferred. None so readily as she gave up her little substance to every demand of purity, even though the bitter heart peppered the bucket given in requital of the food brought regularly to his door, or the garments wrought for him by the fingers that could have embroidered a monarch robe. None so self-devoted as Hester, when pestilence stalked through the town. In all seasons of calumny, indeed, whether general of all individuals, the outcast of society at once found her place. She came not as a guest, but as a rightful inmate into the household that was darkened by trouble, as if its as, as if its gloomy twilight were a medium in which he was entitled to hold intercourse with her fellow creatures. There glimmered the embroidered letter, with comfort in its earnestly grey. Elsewhere the token of sin, it was the taper of the sick chamber. It had even thrown its gleam in the sufferer's heart streamily across the verge of time. It had shown him where to set his foot, while the life of earth was fast becoming dim, and ere the line of purity could reach him. In such emergencies Hester's nature showed Caesar's ward it reached a well-spring of human tenderness, unfailing to every real demand, and inexcusably by the largest. Her breast, with its budget of shame, was but the softer pillow of the head that neared one. She was self-ordained a sister of mercy, or we may rather say, the words Heavy had so ordained her, whene'er the world nor she looked forward to this result. The letter was the symbol of her calling. Such helpfulness was found in her, so much power to do and power to sympathize, that many people refuse to interpret the Scarlet A by its original signification. They said that it meant evil, so strong was Hester's pride with a woman's strength. It was only the darkened house that could contain her. When sunshine came again, she was not there. Her shadow had faded across the threshold. The helpful inmate had departed without one backward glance to gather up the meed of gratitude, if anywhere in the hearts of those whom she had served so zealously. Meeting them in the street, she never raised her head to receive their greeting. If they were resolute to accost her, she laid her finger on the scarlet letter, and passed on. This might be pride, but was so like humility that it produced all the sovereign influence of the letter query on the public mind. The public is despotic in its temper; it is capable of denying common justice, when to externalize demand as a right, but quite as frequently it awards more than justice, when the appeal is made, as despots love to have it made, contrary to its generosity. Interpreting Hester Prynne's deportment as an appeal of this nature, society was inclined to show its former victim a more benign countenance than she cared to be favoured with, or perchance than she deserved. The rulers and the wise and learned men of the community were longer in acknowledging the influence of Hester's good qualities than the people. The prejudices which they shared in common with the latter were fortified in themselves by an iron framework of reasoning that made it far too elaborate to spell them. Day by day, nevertheless, their sore and rigid wrinkles were relating into something which, in the due course of years, might grow to be an expression of almost benevolence. Thus it was with the men of rank on whom their eminent position imposed the guardianship of the public morals. Individuals in private life, meanwhile, had quite forgiven Hesperonychus for her fairly named moral. They had begun to look upon the Scarlet Letter as the token, not of That one sin for which she had borne so long and dreary a penance, but of her many good designs. "Do you see that woman with the embroidered badge?" they will say to strangers. "It's our Hester, the town's own Hester, who is so kind to the poor, so helpful to the sick, so comfortable to the afflicted." Then, it is true, the propensity of human nature to tell the very worst of itself when embodying the person of another, will constrain them to whisper the blank scandal of bygone years. It was none the less a fact, however, that in the eyes of the very man who spoke thus, the scarlet letter had the effect of a cross on a nun's bosom. It imparted to the word a kind of secretness, which enabled her to walk securely and men of peril. Had she fallen among thieves, it would have kept her safe. It was reported and believed by many that an Indian had drawn his arrow against the badge, and that the missile struck it, but fell harmless to the ground. The effect of the symbol, or rather of the position in respect to society that was indicated by it, on the mind of Hester Prynne herself, was powerful and peculiar. All the light and graceful foliage of the hair Carter had been withered upon by this red-hot brand, and had long ago fallen away, leaving a bare and harsh outline, which might have been repulsive had she possessed friends or companions to be repelled by it. Even the attractiveness of her person had undergone a similar change. It might be partly owing to the sturdy austerity of her dress, and partly to a lack of demonstration in her manners. It was a sad transformation, too, that her rich and lusty ragged hair had ever been cut off, or was so completely hidden by a cap, that nor a general lock of it ever once gushed into the sunshine. It was due in part to all these causes, but still more to something else, that there seemed to be no longer anything in Hester's face for love to dwell upon. Nothing in Hester's form, though majestic and statue-like, that patience would ever dream of clasping in its embrace. Nothing in Hester's bosom, to make it ever again the pillow of affection. Some attribute had departed from her, the permanence of which had been essential to keep her a woman. Such is frequently the fate, and such the stern development, of the feminine character in person, when the woman has incurred and lived through an experience of peculiar severity. If she be all tenderness she will die; if she survive, the tenderness will either be crushed out of her, or, and the outward semblance is the same, crushed so deeply into her heart that it can never show itself more. The latter is perhaps the truest theory. She who has once been woman, and ceased to be so, might at any moment become a woman again, if there were only the magic touch to effect the transfiguration. We shall see whether Hester Prynne were ever afterwards touched and so transfigured. Much of the marble coolness of Hester's impression was to be attributed to the circumstance that her life had turned, in a great measure, from passion and feeling, to thought, standing alone in the world, alone as to any dependence on society, and with little Belle to be guided and protected. Alone and hopeless of retrieving her position, even had she not courage to consider it desirable, she cast away the fragments of a broken chain. The word's law was no law for her mind, it was an age in which the human intellect, newly emancipated, had taken a more active and wider range than for many centuries before. Men of these wars had overthrown nobles and kings. Men bolder than these had overthrown in rhetoric, not actually, but were in the sphere of theory, which was their most real about the whole system of ancient prejudice, wherewith was linked much, much of ancient principle. Hester Prynne inherited this spirit. She assumed a freedom of speculation then common enough on the other side of the Atlantic, but which our forefathers had they known of it, would have held to be a deadlier crime than sympathized by the Scarlet. In her lonesome cottage by the seashore, thoughts visited her such as dared to enter to another dwelling in New England. She only guessed that would have been as peerless as demon to the entertainer. Could they have been seen so much as knocking at her door? It is remarkable that persons who speculate the most boldly often convert with the most perfect quietude to the external regulation of society. The thought suffices them, without investing themselves in this flesh and blood of action. So it seemed to be with Hester. Yet, had literature never come to her from the spiritual world, it might have been far otherwise. Then she might have come down to us in history, hat in hand with Anne Hutchinson, as the foundress of a religious sect. She might in one of her phases have been a prophetess. She might, and not improbably will, have suffered death from the stern tribunals of the period, or for attempting to undermine the foundation of the Puritan establishment. But in the education of her child, the mother's enthusiasm of thought had something to work itself upon. Providence, in the person of this little girl, had assigned to history change the garment blossom of womanhood, to be cherished and developed amid a host of difficulties. Everything was against her. The world was hostile. The child's own nature had something wrong in it, which continually betokened that she had been born amiss. The affluence of her mother's loudness passion, and often impelled Hester to act, in bitterness of heart, whether it were for ill or good that the purely little creature that had been born at all. Indeed, the same dark question often rose into her mind with reference to the whole race of womanhood. Was existence worth accepting, even to the happiest among them? As concerning her own individual existence, she had long ago decided negative, and dismissed the point as zero. A tendency to speculation, though it may keep women quiet, as it does men, yet makes her sad. She discerned, it may be, such a hopeless task before her. As a first step, the whole system of society is to be torn down, and built up anew. Then the very nature of the opposite sex, or its long hereditary habit, which has become little nature, is to be essentially modified before woman can be allowed to assume what seems a fair and suitable position. Finally, all other difficulties being averted, woman cannot take advantage of these preliminary reforms until she herself shall have undergone a still mightier change, in which, perhaps, the eternal essence, warning she has her truest life, will be found to have evaporated. A woman never overcomes these problems by any exercise of thought. They are not to be solved or only in one way: if her heart changed to come uppermost, they vanish, they are not to be sold; or only in one way: if her heart changed to come uppermost, they vanished. Thus Hester Prynne, whose heart had lost its regular and healthy throb, wandered without a clue in the dark labyrinth of mind, now turned aside by an unsurmountable precipice, now starting back from a deep chasm. There was wild, everlasting serenity all around her, and a harmony comfort now here. At times a fearful doubt strove to possess her soul, whether it were not better to send spirits at once to heaven, and go herself to such purity as eternal justice should provide. The scarlet letter had not done its office. Now, however, her interview with the Reverend Mr. Disney on the night of his vigil had given her a new tone of reflection. It held up to her an object that appeared worthy of any extraction and sacrifice of its attainment. She had witnessed the intense misery beneath which the minister struggled, or, to speak more accurately, had ceased to struggle. She saw that he stood on the verge of lunacy. If he had not already stepped across it, it was impossible to doubt that whatever painful efficacy there might be in the secret sting of remorse at the liner, venom had been infused into it by the hand that proffered relief. A secret enemy had been continually by his side, under the semblance of a friend and helper, and had availed himself of the opportunities thus afforded for tampering with the delicate spirits of Mr. Disney's nature. Hester could not but ask herself whether there had not originally been a defect of true courage and loyalty on her own part in allowing the minister to be thrown into a position where so much evil was to be foreboded, and nothing auspicious to be hoped. Her only justification lay in the fact that she had been able to discern no method of rescuing him from a blacker ruin that had overwhelmed herself, except, except by acquiescence in Roger Shiney's word, shaman of disguise. Under that Under that impulse she had made her choice, and had chosen, as it now appeared, the more crucial alternative of the two, determined to redeem her hero, so far as it might yet be possible. Strained by years of hard and silent trial, she felt herself no longer so unacquainted to cope with Roger's shiny word, as on that night, abased by sin and half maddened by the ignominy that was still new, when they had talked together in the prison chamber. She had climbed her way, since then, to a higher point. The old man, on the other hand, had brought himself nearer to her level, or perhaps below it by the revenge which he had stooped for. In fine, Hester Prynne resolved to meet her former husband, and do what might be in her power for the rescue of the veteran on whom he had so eventually set his grave. The occasion was not long to seek. One afternoon, walking with Pearl in a retired part of the peninsula, she beheld the old physician, with a basket on one arm, and a staff in the other hand, stooping along the ground in quest of roots and herbs to concoct his medicine withal.